and welcome back to another episode of Executive Spotlight. My name is Camille Renner, and I am the Associate Editor of AutoSuccess magazine. Today in the AutoSuccess studio, I have Kimberly Cowan with me. She's the CEO of Kymeera. Welcome, Kimberly.
Hi, thanks for having me, Camille.
Of course, yeah, appreciate you coming to the studio to do this video. Just to start, I'd love to hear a little bit about your experience in the auto industry, how you found your way into your current role, and maybe what your company does a little bit.
So 20 years of Cliff Note version?
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right. I got into automotive back when the internet was just dawning. And so I actually joined Trader Publishing Company, and one of my first jobs in automotive was going into different markets and teaching our print reps what the internet was and teaching dealers what the internet was and trying to convert them to buy online for like AutoMart, AutoTrader, and there was a lot of pushback at that time that the internet was a fad and it was gonna go away. And so that's kind of how I started. And then building from there, I have built products with AutoTrader, like what's now called KBB Instant Offer. Back in the day, it was Trade and Marketplace. Worked with Brian Scudda to build that out. When we did some acquisitions at Cox, I joined the Vint Solutions team and helped build that out. Redid their brand and marketing. And so I've been very fortunate in my career to have these like huge opportunities to, as our industry is evolving and changing, to be a part of those and to really grow. I've never said no to an opportunity, regardless of what that is. And so I think that's worked out well for me.
Absolutely.
And so what I do today at Kymeera, we are a software and a contact center. And so we support dealerships with outsourced BDC support. And then we also support the vendor side with helping them facilitate the sales and contacting the dealerships to actually make those sales. And so we kind of have a two-pronged contact center. And then we have software solutions that support those things.
Awesome. Well, it kind of sounds like you're a master of all. Do a lot with your company, it sounds like. Today, though, I'd love to talk to you a little bit about something that is on everyone's mind in the industry, in all industries really, and that's just employee relations, employee retention, and how to get the most out of your employees. So, first of all, obviously we're in the big hiring shortage.
Yes. There's some challenges right now, yeah.
Where do you see that evolving to in the near or far future? Do you think this is going to be a lasting problem?
So I think that there's always ebbs and flows when you look at human capital, and it's always tied to the economics of what's going on. Like we have a pending recession coming right now. We've got, we're coming out of a pandemic. So we've got these nuances that we've never actually experienced before anywhere globally. So there's a shortage today. I think a lot of people think that shortage, really evolves around pay and not paying enough or not paying this. And I think that's important, but I think that's a part of it. I think we are struggling as a society, whether it's in automotive or outside of automotive, to really look at focusing on the employee. And what I mean by that is, when I first got into the workforce, it was do your best to impress. And, if your employer wants you to work 20 hours a day, you work 20 hours a day. And it was very self-sacrificial on the employee side because it was the expectation you just do those things. And I think over the last 20 years, that started to shift a bit, where employees are like, no, what are you going to do for me? And they're not tolerating some of that type of behavior. And I think that's where a lot of companies struggle. And I think that's the difference of if you think of like managing versus mentoring, there's a huge difference, right? So like managing would be focusing on the operations of something and the performance that employee has doing that job. Mentoring would be helping with the professional development with that employee of making them feel like this is the right opportunity for them and they want to grow with the company. And so it has to become more balanced. And I think if companies really started focusing on some of those things and really looking at it from a different lens, then I think that would help with some of the retention issues that we have. I think we are going to see a swing from a shortage of employees to a shortage of job availability, right? But we're still going to have some of those issues, right?
Absolutely.
So
that's a very interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I love LinkedIn. I don't know if you use LinkedIn a lot.
I do.
I always find a lot of really thought-provoking type of conversations around managing versus mentoring on LinkedIn. And I saw something recently, kind of going back to what you were talking about we're kind of pushing that pay is the most important thing, but maybe it's not. And it said, it was a poll on LinkedIn, what's more important to you, your title or your pay? But I would add to that maybe growth opportunities, mentoring opportunities. Would you agree that's probably more important than either?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that on average, we're seeing some of the younger generations are staying in jobs about every 3 years and cycling out. Whereas in previous generations, 10, 20, 30, it's a different game. Pay is important, title is important, but I have never met somebody who wanted to work hard that wouldn't say no to an opportunity that made less if it would help them get to their end goal. I think it's an employer's responsibility to help pave that path. As an example, every day I wake up, the first thing I think about is my team. It's my responsibility to make sure, I'm responsible for their livelihoods. I'm responsible to make sure that I'm giving them the opportunities. It is their journey. I'm a part of their journey. So whether they work for me for 2 weeks, 2 months, 20 years, it's still their journey. I need team members to be the most productive for the company, but it's a part of their journey. And so I think a lot of employers sometimes will make mistakes of like, hey, I've got this really great salesperson. They're amazing. I'm going to put them into leadership. Well, just because they're a great individual contributor doesn't mean that they're a great leader. And just because you're a great leader doesn't mean that you're a great salesperson. And so we need to start looking at people individually and what their focus is to create that value, to make people want to stay, want to grow, and have that opportunity. So if you think of like, I'm a Gen Xer. Gen Xers, we hoped to have equality and equal pay. Millennials want to have those things. The new generation, the up-and-coming generation, they expect those things, but we're still working off of mentalities of yesteryear, and that's, I think, is causing a lot of the rift right now. It's not just pay. And so we've always ran companies this certain way. It could seem like, hey, they're ungrateful. They're not willing to put in their time. They've got people coming out of college. That's not true. It's an expectation that it's a partnership, and it's our responsibility to make sure that everyone feels like they're on the same page. That's a culture. We have to focus on the culture of a company. Some people are going to fit your culture and some people don't. As an employer, if I've got team members that aren't a good match, I get them out quick. I'm just being honest. If I've got people that are a good match, I spend the time to help develop because that helps everybody in the end.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. Yeah, totally. Thank you. So obviously you have a lot of thoughts and or maybe expertise on this. So you must have had some good mentors along the way.
I have. I've been very lucky. When I was younger, I think I struggled with being able to communicate in an effective way that inspired people because I'm naturally very direct. So I'll speak more in data, like black and white. This is wrong, this needs to change, this is good, this is not. But I didn't do a lot of the fluff. And so I really had to work on that. And I even had one year, and when I worked for AutoTrader, one of the senior leaders had gave me feedback on my annual and said that, you're great and you're so helpful and you're smart and you do all these great things, but you're polarizing.
Okay.
Oh, ouch. And he literally told me, he's like, you need to work on the softer side of Sears. And I'm like, okay. And it was suggested that I go find a mentor that was opposite of me so I could learn how to be fluffy. And I thought about it and that didn't make sense to me. I can't go be somebody that I'm not. Sure. What I can do is I can work on polishing up who I am and figure out how to deliver and package that in a way that inspires others. And so I remember walking by the exec floor at AutoTrader and Ian McDonald, he was one of the senior leaders for sales, and he's British and he's very polished, and he's he gets on stage and you're just like, wow, he has that charisma about him. I remember but he's also very direct because he's British. No, but he's very direct, and he always knew where you stood. And so I remember walking by, and I went into his office, and I was like, will you help me? And he's like, what? Well, I need to not be so polarizing, and I don't know how to do that because I don't realize that I'm doing that, and I don't know how to, like, I would know something, but I wouldn't know how to communicate it. So, like, I could tell if, like, an iceberg was coming, but I couldn't get the team on the same side going, okay, the iceberg's coming, let's move. They would just think I'm being mean.
Sure.
Right? So I had this conversation with him, and he agreed. And I think that was the best, like, formal mentoring program that I've ever been through. And I've modeled a lot of what I do based off of that foundation because he put me through a year-long program. Like I did the Myers-Briggs testing for HB. I did all these other, like, personality tests. I learned about my personality and other personalities and how to communicate with that. I went through, like, Toastmasters on how to, like, present in front of people. I learned about red threads. You ever heard about a red thread? So a red thread is basically, if you're trying to weave a story, it's the thread that goes throughout it that keeps people engaged.
Gotcha.
To get to the end. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that.
So he taught me how to package those things and gave me confidence in the way that I delivered it. And I think that has proven to be so immensely helpful for me because I don't make people cry anymore. So that's a win.
You haven't made me cry yet.
The day is young, my friend. No, just kidding.
Well, that story is interesting to me because obviously you had a little bit of a push to find a mentor, but you really found them on your own. Is it up to the individual employee to find their mentor, or should companies in general be doing more formal mentoring programs?
I think it's a combination.
Okay.
I think that companies should have a formalized mentoring development program. So as an example, I do an individual development plan with every single one of my team members. That is based off of a combination of short-term and long-term goals that's specific to what they're looking to do. So if I've got someone who has come in one role, but their ultimate goal, maybe they came in through customer service or they're one of my BDC agents, but ultimately they want to get into marketing. Well, part of their development plan would be the opportunity to have exposure into marketing things, to learn about those things so that that's their part of their professional development. If there are certain things that they need to work on, whether it's styling, delivery, we will carve those things out. But the mentoring, you have to have somebody who wants to do that too. Your company can't be like, oh, here's all this stuff, and the team member's like, I don't really care about that. They have to want that. And so you have to, as the employer, I think it's about figuring out what speaks to the individual person, because what inspires you isn't going to inspire somebody else, but at the end of the day, we still have to get the job done, right?
Right.
A good leader figures out what inspires those people individually to bring it back together as a team. The individual responsibility is to make sure that they're growing and they're being open and honest about what they're looking for, and they're in it to win it. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And everyone has different aspirations professionally. There are some people who want to work 15 hours a day. They're workaholics. I'm one of them. I love to work. It's my life. It's a lot of my identity. But I have team members who they love their job, but they want to go in and do their 8 hours, and they don't want to think about it when they go home. Mm-hmm. I am perfectly fine with that because I do a really good job when they're there. I can't expect others to think the way that I am. Otherwise, that's not what's going to grow the company. That's not what's going to grow their development. You have to meet people where they are and help them get where they want to be.
Yeah, makes total sense. And what you just said about growing the company, obviously, in a perfect world, every employee could make however much they want and be treated however they want. But at the end of the day, it's a business. But I would like to hear how companies may be establishing mentoring programs or helping managers mentor better would affect the business overall.
Well, I think it's understanding that there's a difference between mentoring and managing. You know, I referenced earlier kind of what that difference is. I think oftentimes we expect managers to be mentors without giving them the actual tools to understand what that is.
Right.
And giving them the latitude to actually create real connections, right? We don't have to be best friends. We don't have to hang out outside of work, but when we are in work, we have to be able to work together in a collaborative way. The business is always going to have deadlines. It's always going to have, you know, expectations, and it has to match back to like revenue opportunity and like long-term viability. But the human element, that in the human experience is where I think sometimes we miss, right? And you'll have senior leaders say, hey, we need to work on culture. Our culture is this. The culture isn't what somebody says it is. The culture is how it actually feels. Yeah. And that's a huge misnomer. That comes from the employees, the team, the way that they feel about their leaders, that feels like the trust. Like my job is to make sure that I remove roadblocks for everybody and to get out of people's way so they can be successful and to help them when they need it. My job is not to dictate how they do things and micromanage them until they hate their job so much they leave. That's a big difference. You know, if we look at some things in automotive, like look on the retail side, you know, we have a lot of struggle on the retail side with turnover, right? We've, for a long time, we have these expectations that we work 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and that's great. That's a certain styling. But as comp plans change, as the markets change, as pay increases in other areas, as we go to different pricing models, that compensation is shifted so much that why would employees want to work that much and make less than if they went somewhere else, like in the restaurant industry? If we're competing for the same and we're paying less and you can have better quality of work-life balance over here, what are we doing to create the desire for people to want? Where's that culture? Where's that opportunity for growth? What are we giving back? And that's where we need to change things. We need to change that thinking.
Absolutely. And do you think by changing this thinking, by working on culture, by working on mentoring, et cetera, could actually help revenue?
Oh, absolutely. Happy employees sell things. When you have team members that are excited about what they're doing, they feel like they've got value and there's a bigger purpose, they're going to shout that from the rooftops. They're going to give referrals for friends. They're going to talk about it on social media. Their quality of work is going to be better. They're going to be more efficient, and they're going to want to work harder and work more for you without the how much are you going to pay me? Mm-hmm. Because that comes. It's a trust. It's a give take.
Yeah.
But if you feel like you're just being told what to do all day and like you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this, if your boss calls you and says, hey, I need you to work 2 extra hours today, we have a deadline, are you going to be like, hey, no problem, I got you? No, you're going to be like, whatever. I'm paid from this time to this time.
Right.
So that's where I think we need to shift a little bit. And how can we be servant leaders? And I know that's like a catchphrase, and you know, it's a true statement.
Yeah.
Like the employee being successful and feeling value is going to make the company more profitable. It's proven time and time again. And also, like, we work with each other more than we don't see. Like, we see each other at work more than we see most of our family. It should be fun, right?
Yeah.
Why be miserable?
Yeah. Definitely. Well, and I think, in my opinion, that's why a lot of perspectives on work have changed so rapidly during the pandemic, was people were realizing how unbalanced their lives were. And then when they were at home more, they were like, wait, I want to be at home more.
Well, so. I think it gave a different view. You know, I am old school in the sense of I like an office setting.
Sure.
I think that there's a certain there's a value to seeing each other and that collaboration that you can try to do on Zoom. You can try to do that on all of those different meetings, but it's not the same as being in person with somebody. However, we have now proven a model that nobody was prepared to consider before, right? And that model is you don't need to have a brick and mortar to be successful in some positions. right? That's not for everything. But I think that change and that flexibility is then opened up. If you look at, look at like the housing market and look at like the vehicle inventory cost right now. If you're in an area, as example, I bought a house in 2019 or 2018-19 in Portland, and I paid, X amount for it. I sold that house last year and I made almost half, half of what I had put in the 2-year period. And I just looked at that house recently and it's worth like even more. So what that does though is that displaces people, and that's where that cost of like, I need to be paid more. Well, that's inflation, right? So like you're paying more, but you're not really making more because the cost of gas is $10 and like you can't buy a house for under $500,000, but it's a house that should be $150,000.
Your rent goes up $1,000.
Right. And so now with the pandemic kind of proving that you can, in some careers, in some positions, you don't have to have walls. It's creating this opportunity for more flexibility of, maybe I can live somewhere more rural. That wasn't an option before. That's more cost effective for me and my family. And I don't have to live in a big city if I don't want to. So that's creating displacement in that way. And I think that you've got some employers that are embracing that change. And you've got some that are like, you have to still stay here. You have to do it my way. It's my way. It's my way. Because they're not prepared to think about it from a different lens. And that is what's pushing talent away. It's not just about you. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you for that perspective. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously crazy times, unpredictable times. We can just hope for the best, I think. But
everything shakes out. I mean, it's horrible and it's scary, some of the things that we're going through, nationally and globally right now. But we will get through it. It's just, how do we get through it? We can either continue to have a lot of angst, or we can figure out how to collaborate together and maybe create some unity and shift in the ways that are best for our future generations. It's going to happen one way or the other. It's just, are we going to go kicking and screaming, or are we going to embrace it? I'd rather embrace. And to do that, it's through employees, in my opinion.
Well, thank you so much, Kimberly, for all your insights today on employee relations, mentoring your employees, and creating a great culture.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated it.
Of course, yeah. Our guest today has been Kimberly Cowan, the CEO of Kymeera. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.